Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Houston Moms on the Move. This is a series produced by Houston Moms, and we are bringing to you high impact women who are also mothers making moves around Houston. Series is designed to inspire, encourage you, get to know some really amazing moms in and around our community. Some of them who you may not know lived in Houston. And with me today is New York Times bestselling author Katherine Center. She's one of those that I had no idea lived in Houston until like a year ago. Katherine, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's so fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And so, Katherine, as I mentioned, is a New York Times bestselling author. You can see her rom-comers poster behind. I also have the book here. She's written so many of my favorites. And also, that was the 11th book, right,
Yeah.
Katherine?
Yeah.
Okay. And then she's had two of her books optioned for movies. So they've been made into movies. Um, and she's working on her 12th one right now, y'all. Yeah. So you were in Galveston this weekend, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And the words are flowing, right?
Yes. So actually, my next book is actually done. It's already turned in. There's a whole sort
Oh,
of I know it's crazy. It's like a whole delayed gratification thing that goes on with books. So my May book that comes out this May is in. It's done.
oh,
I'm about to copy edit it. And now I'm actually starting my 2026 book, which,
okay.
like totally, I mean, it's so far out from now that just living a life where I'm constantly thinking 2 years ahead is like, I never know what year it is. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's what I'm starting is 2026, which is a long,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Because I mean, well, I had to think for a minute. Like, I'm like, what year are we? We are
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It's a crazy life.
so and when this comes out, it'll be almost 2025. So,
Yeah, it will be. It will be. So the one that's already turned in comes out in May of 2025, and the one I'm starting right now comes out in sometime in 2026. It's crazy.
okay. So my book lovers, romance lover, rejoice because there's a new one coming in May. Um, but you are also a mama. Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of like a little bit of your personal life there?
Yeah. So I'm from Houston. I grew up here. I'm like fifth generation Houston person. Like my mom's family came over in the 1860s from
Oh,
Germany. So we've been here a long time. I don't know how we picked the swamplands, but we did, and we've been here a long time. So I grew up here, and I have two sisters, and parents, and then I'm married to the nicest guy in the world, who is a middle school teacher, and we have two kids, and the youngest one actually just left for college. So I've just sort of crossed the finish line on this sort of big 20-year journey, and I feel like I have a lot of wisdom to share.
well, so you are in very much that you just like this transitional period. So you have a freshman and a senior
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
And so what has that journey been like to kind of like get them over that finish line? But also you're still a mom, right?
Yeah, it is all the feelings. I was really, really nervous about it this summer. Just like we've lived in the same house for 20 years and it's always had kids in it. We moved in when my daughter was just about to turn one. And for some reason this summer, I was so nervous about like, what was it going to feel like to live in this house and not have there be any kids here? And
Mm.
there was actually a moment this summer when I woke up first thing in the morning and had this thought like, oh my God, I just had the craziest dream that Thomas was about to leave for college. And then I kind of paused and I'm like, oh no, that's happening. That's actually real. Like that's really happening. So it was weird and I felt nervous about it. And then it happened and it was really okay. Like I was like I miss them. I love them, but I also really like them. They're super fun to be around, and I'm a big fan of both of my kids. but it's okay. Like we're doing fine. My kids are actually, they checked up on me a couple times. They're like, doing all right, doing okay. I'm like, it is all the feelings. But it's like you kind of get yourself back in this weird way. I mean, that's my report from the front, back to the moms who are still like in the thick of it, is that you suddenly your time is kind of like not entirely your own, because adult life has this way of making you do all kinds of stuff that you might not
Right.
have otherwise. But a big chunk of it kind of comes back to you, and there's something really nice about that. So yeah, it's good, but it's a lot. I mean, it is every conceivable feeling. There's a grief to it because you're kind of letting go of this part of yourself that was the mom of these little animals that were just climbing all over you all the time. And I totally loved that part of my life. But you also, so you're letting go of something that's really big and matters a lot to you and means a lot, but you're also getting all these things like free time. So it's
Oh,
okay.
what a novelty, free time. Because I know some of our moms are out there being like, what is free time exactly? What does that look like?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we appreciate your report from the front that it's
Yes.
going to be okay. Like
Totally.
I had a moment today, a friend of mine's daughter turned 16 and kind of followed their mom journey. And I was like crying and I'm like, what am I gonna do? And for reference, my twins are just a little over 14. They're my one and onlys. And so I'm like, I'm gonna need a padded room when they
Yeah.
turn 16. When they go to college, I don't know. Like, but you're giving me hope that
Yeah.
I might be
Megan.
okay. I might
Yeah.
be,
It-
somebody said the other day, and it was like by the time they're like, you think you're not going to be ready, but then you've parented so long and so hard that by the time they're ready to go to college, it's almost this natural transition because they're ready, you're all kind of not over it, but you know what I mean? Kind of over
yeah.
it.
Oh, for
Does
sure.
that make sense?
I think that's the key to it actually, is that they're ready.
Yeah.
So they help you get ready. And in some
Mm,
ways by like pushing you away and like just wanting to be with their friends. And that's
yeah.
really hard to imagine. When your kids are 5 and all they want to do is snuggle you, it is very hard to imagine that you will ever get to that point. But of course, developmentally, you do, right? They want to
Yeah.
hang out with their friends. And so um they ease you into it. They spend more and more time out of the house. They're driving, big things happen, and then you kind of get used to it inch by inch. And then there's this big moment, right, when they leave wherever it is they're going to go after high school, and that's a transition. It is,
Mm,
but it does have lots of upsides. I mean, it really
yeah.
does. So I just know that going forward. I mean, I really was feeling a little panicked this summer. I was like, we're going to need some hobbies. Like, we're going to need something to do on the other side of this, because parenting, it's a huge project and it's very time consuming. But
Yeah.
you'll be amazed at how you just kind of know, like you figure it out. You work your way back into it. My mom promised me, my very wise Texas mother promised me that we were going to have a renaissance after the kids went to college. And she's kind of right. I'm totally feeling it. Like we're doing fine.
Oh, so hopeful.
Yeah,
And then you can like escape to Galveston and you didn't have to worry about like coordinating childcare, making sure no one's burning down the house. Like, what a joy.
yeah. No, although I did have to take my dog with me, and she's in some ways like more work than a child, but we managed. We got it done.
Oh, so good. So, okay, so obviously you wrote a lot of books when your kids were younger.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about how you maintained, because you're an author too, so like a lot of that is done where it may not, I'm not assuming this, it may not look like you're working, but you are working and you're in like a lot of moms are trying really hard to like just be able to find words and never mind trying to put them on paper and write a novel. Could you talk a little bit about those early days and what that looked like for you guys?
Yeah. I mean, the early days were really hard, job wise, because I was basically trying to cram my job into the margins around being a mom. I mean, that was
Mm,
the way that, everybody's got their way of figuring it out, but that was the way that I did it. And so, I was writing when they weren't around, which was not all that often. And actually, I wrote books less frequently. So, right. So early on, like right now, I kind of write a book a year, basically. This kind of my
Yeah.
broad schedule. But when I first started, it was like a book every 2 or 3 years. And that was the fastest I could go because I just had, I had, I had stuff to do. I had mom stuff to do. And so, like when you think about work-life balance, um, that's a hard thing to do. It's hard when you've got kids, right? There kind of is no balance in a way. It's more like pendulum swings of like this week my child has the flu, so that's all I'm going to do for this whole week. And then it swings back the other way and you're like, okay, the kids are all right. I'm going to try and get a bunch done. I mean, for me, actually, the system that I evolved for writing novels, which may not apply to everybody, is that I would leave town and do my books in chunks. So that's why I went to Galveston, is that it's kind of just Pavlovian at this point to like when I go to like when I see the beach, I'm ready to write. But the whole Galveston thing got started because like I had to get away from ordinary everyday life because I think writing a book is it's a lot like walking out to the end of a long dock and then getting in a little rowboat and then rowing yourself out into the deep ocean of your imagination. And if your kids are right there on the shore and they need you, you cannot do that. Like you can't make
Yeah.
yourself do that, right? So I just had to leave and I would go for like 4 or 5 days at a time. I would leave my kids with my husband, who's great, and my mom, who's also great. And they were like they would tag team everything and kind of keep everybody alive. And I would go down there and if I'm not interrupted, if I'm not driving carpool or making dinner or getting anybody to the orthodontist, I can do a huge amount in a very short amount of time, right? So I could wake up in the morning, make a pot of coffee, start writing, and the next thing I knew, it was dark outside, right? And I've
Mm.
just been writing all day, just lost in the story. Um, and so that was actually really productive. So I would do it in chunks. So I would do like 40 or 50 pages, come home and totally forget about the book and just be a mom, right, for 3 weeks or so. And then, or maybe 4 or 5, depending on how soon the deadline was coming up. And then I would schedule another section and I would go back down to the beach and I would reread what I had read before, kind of get back in the groove, and then do another big chunk. And so that was kind of the rhythm that I kind of established because I'm not really a multitasker. I can't really do two things at once.
Mm.
I can't be like fully present in the moment with my kids and also writing a novel away in my imagination at the same time. So I just tag teamed it. I just kind of that's not the right
Yeah.
term, but I staggered it. And that worked. And actually I think even with them grown up now, I think I'm still going to kind of do it that way because I think doing a burst and then giving it sort of time to settle and then coming
Mm.
back to it with fresh eyes and doing some more and then giving that time to settle seems to be a really good rhythm for me.
What's good about that is such self-awareness and being like, okay, this is what we figured out works for our family, it works for me, it works. Um, and I think a lot of us struggle as moms, like figuring out like, okay, how do we make this work? And sometimes you just, I mean, how much grace did you have to give yourself? Like on weeks with the flu, you just have to be like, you know what? It's
Yeah.
not happening.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about your support system. A lot of the other moms we've talked to talked about their villages and whatnot. Did you have something similar with as the kids were growing up?
So yeah, I would say that really my village was mostly my mom and my husband. Like uh and some yeah, and mom friends too, like that's important too. The mom
Yeah.
friends were the play dates and the hanging out and the goofing around. But in terms of like the hard stuff or like the really intense who are you really leaning on, it was my mom, who's the greatest mom on the planet, and she is 83 now and still just like cruising around getting stuff done, more energy than all three of her kids put together. And then my husband, who is um amazing. I mean, he's so excited about my job. He thinks it's
Mm.
so cool. He's genuinely thrilled about what I'm doing. And so he's worked really hard to be available. He's a teacher, so he had kind of that teacher schedule, which was good because it aligned with the kids and made things
Yeah.
easier. So that was lucky. But yeah, those two were the ones I leaned on the hardest. And we made a little sort of village of sort of three adults looking after all these little animals. But again, I also like that's another reason why I tried to consolidate it, so I could be home. I was home most of the time, and my job was super flexible, which is a lucky thing about being a writer. You can kind of rearrange it. And and if I ever had a choice between the kids and the books, I always picked, the live humans, right, over the imaginary people. That was kind of my strategy. So the kids always came first, and then the books, had to take their chances and hope for the best. But that's why it was a little slower in the beginning. And now that they're grown up, I
The
think
live humans over the imaginary. Okay, I love it. Like, but sometimes that can be hard because I mean, I'm a writer, but I'm not like a writer like you are a writer. Um, but I'll be into a piece and I'll be like, oh no, 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 no. Like, and I have to catch myself and be like, okay, they actually are requesting attention right now.
yeah,
I think it's so sweet the way you talk about your husband. I feel like bits and pieces of your husband get into some of the main characters in your books. Am I right or wrong about that?
100%, 100%. He is the funniest person I've ever met. Um, he's adorable. We banter all the time. Like that's our main thing that we do together. We don't really have any overlapping interests, like the Venn diagram of the things that he likes to do and is interested in and the things that I like to do. It's like two separate circles, really. And the only place that it really touches is that we both like making people laugh and we both like making each other laugh. So that's like our main thing that we do together. We're not like on a bowling team. We just like sit around whenever we have free time and try to crack each other up. That's what we do. And so he is in all of the books because the
Yeah.
number one sort of, I would say, defining thing about the books that I write is that they are full of people joking around with each other and bantering
Yes.
with each other. And that's where all that comes from.
Oh, I love it so much. I mean, I've literally laughed out loud, almost to the point where you feel like you're almost being a little bit silly because you're like, I'm reading it and I'm laughing, and they're like, "What are you laughing at?" And I'm like, I can't really explain it because I'm already like 200 pages in, but I am laughing at these imaginary people. But I mean, I can see where that humor comes in. And so leads me to my next question. Like, how do you maintain or how did you maintain like this? Like, because you seem like such a positive person. And you seem like a very happy, joyful person. Where do you get that from? Like how and then on days where it felt like it was lagging, because we can't all be happy, happy, joy, joy all the time. Where did you draw your motivation to go out and parent?
Those are great questions. Um, I would say that at this point in my life, I am a pretty happy person, but I did not start out that way. I started out sort of cranky and cynical and and basically like always kind of looking at the dark side first and then having to work my way backwards. Like I always, and this is still true, start with death in any situation and then I have to kind of talk myself back off the ledge of like, okay, we're not dying. Um so I've the sort of project of my adult life has been constantly trying to figure out how to make the best use of my brief time on this planet, right? Like how
Yeah.
to kind of do it the best that I possibly can. You get one shot at living your life, and I really, really want to figure it out. And so I think about it a lot. I work on it a lot, like how to be happy, right? How to be grateful, how to focus on the good things in your life instead of constantly worrying about the worries and the struggles and the problems, because those things are all there all the time.
Yeah.
And I think when I was younger, I used to think that you had to solve all the problems before you could be happy. And somewhere along the way, it kind of started to occur to me that you're never going to solve all the problems. And so you just have to figure out how to be happy through it and around it and in spite of it, and even because of it sometimes. And the big thing that really helped me with that was marrying my husband, who I've been with since I was 22, because he is the king of finding the upside of anything. And he's the king of finding what's funny about any situation. And I wasn't very good at that when I first met him, but I would like study him. It was like a sociology project. I was like, what's going on over there? Like why are you okay right now? Like the car just broke down, and he'd be like, yeah, but we found that taco truck, or like whatever it was, right? He just had this way of making things better. Like every situation that he went into, he would find some way to make it better. And so I just sort of started trying to copy him. I was
Mm,
like, whatever he's doing, it is working. Like whatever that
yeah.
is, I want to do that. And so I started really, I mean, consciously working really hard to look for the good stuff, right? And to find the upsides. And I did not start out good at it. And I'm still not, I mean, I'm not going to win any prizes, but I'm way better than I used to be. And actually, I mean, this all connects back to my books because every single book that I write has characters trying to learn how to do some version of that thing,
Yes.
right? How to be okay in the face of it all, right? And so it's just this life project for me of like trying to figure out, how to make the best of things, which I did not start out being great at. I was much better at making the worst of things. And but I think after all these years of really working on it, I've gotten better.
I mean, I can attest to somebody who's like met you in person. Yes, y'all can be jealous. She came to our book club. It was awesome. But I mean, you really do radiate kind of that joy. I will say my husband sounds similar to yours. But also that's like a little annoying where I'm like, stop finding the bright side. I just want to be angry right now. Like, so I'm like,
Yeah.
we don't
So
have to be
yeah.
optimistic.
Our kids were not sleepers. They were not good sleepers, neither one of them. They were up, they were restless, they were like you make one creak on the floor of our old house and they're awake. And for like years, this went on years.
Mm.
Nobody slept through the night. And I was so tired. I was like a crazy, I looked like Einstein. I was just a crazy person. And and every single night, my adorable, optimistic husband would be like, tonight's the night. I feel it. They're gonna sleep through. I've got a good feeling. And I'd be like, you're a monster. They're never gonna sleep through the night. And eventually they did. I mean, eventually he was right. But yeah, it can be a little frustrating when you're like, I just need you to go to a very dark place with me. And they're like, no.
Yes. Please dive down. Well, so I will say, like Micah, well, twins, and so trying to get them to sleep, super fun. I did learn that my husband does not operate well on very little sleep. And so I'm like, listen, I'm going to sleep in the guest bedroom next to where the twins are, and you're just going to get your 8 hours because I can't deal with that. So, I mean, we kind of just have to figure out how
Yeah.
to make it work, right? Like, and I'm sure yours are what, 4 years apart, 3, 4 years apart?
Uh, yeah, 3 years apart.
I mean, and so you have like one toddling around, one in diapers. Um, is there any like specific memory from like when they were that young that you're just like, oh gosh, I can't believe we did that, survived it. Um, or something really sweet too. Either way.
You know, when our kids were little, it's Houston, right? So it's so hot outside all summer long, right? And you want your kids to run around outside in the summer, but also it's 5,000 degrees and you
Yeah.
kind of feel like they might like die.
Yes.
So we did many things to try to combat that. I mean, my husband took them to the pool at the Bel Air Recreation Center like every single day all summer long when they were little. So there's all kinds of strategies, but one of the many things we did to try and just like give them something physical to do in the summers
Yeah.
was we hung like monkey rings in our living room from the ceiling that we got at like IKEA, right? Like just these, like they were supposed to go outside, but we hung them inside and we put this like mat underneath and then they would just do all these tricks. And um
Oh my gosh, you had the cool house.
yeah, it was actually pretty great. It was really fun. It was there for a long, long time until I finally like was like, I'm gonna turn this back into a regular living room again. And we took them down, but the bolts are still in the ceiling, actually. Um, but there was a time when my daughter was trying to do some tricks on those little rings, and she was probably like 8 or something. And uh she couldn't do the thing she was trying to do, right? And she like whatever it was, she had some goal and she just couldn't make it and she was kind of getting frustrated. And then there was a moment when she kind of fell and hit the mat. And was trying to be very like, I was like, oh, babe, don't worry about it. Keep working. You'll get there. And then she was like, I know. And she looked at me very, very seriously. And she was like, life is going to knock you down over and over. And you just have to learn how to get back up. And I was like, oh my God, you're a genius. That's so true. Um, so that memory was in my head the other day. Kids are so cute and they're so like wise about all kinds of things. I wound
They're
up like
little.
stealing that from her and putting it in a book. It's in one of my books somewhere.
I was gonna say you had to have taken that line and be like, hold on. I know we promised that we weren't going to cross over to the books, but I got to go write that down. So like, give me 1 second. I love
There's
it.
actually
Your
there's
little,
actually there's another thing. I sent her to camp when she was little.
yeah.
She really, really wanted to go. And I felt like she was too young, but she was very insistent that she was going to be great. And she was. And she's a total extrovert, so it was fine. But uh, before she left, I was trying to think of like, what was the advice I would have loved to have,
Mm,
heading off to camp as a little kid. Um, and I said, here's the thing. Here's my best advice for you. When you don't know what to do for yourself, do something for somebody else, right? Like if you're feeling homesick or lonely or weird,
yeah.
like go help somebody with some project, right? Go fold something for somebody. Go, you know, participate in something that's making somebody else's life better. And then that also wound up in a book that I wrote called How to Walk Away, where it's kind of this motto. It winds up being a motto. But that's the fun thing about raising kids is that you're trying to teach them how to be good at life. You're trying
Mm,
to give them all the wisdom you can possibly think of. You're racking your brain for wisdom. And but it winds up making your life better too, right?
yeah.
Because you're guiding them, but you're guiding yourself in this funny way. So
Completely. It's what you're saying to them is stuff that we need to be telling ourselves,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like especially these kind of teenage years. I'm telling my daughter, like, oh my gosh, promise you, it gets so much better. You will find your people, you will find your people. And like it's also me kind of telling myself that, like, in this weird time, like, you'll find your people, like, and it happens and we're kind of growing up together, really,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
which is a beautiful thing. I love it. So, um, I've asked you a lot of questions. I know. I'm sorry. It's so good. It's so good to hear all the advice. So now we're gonna get into some rapid fire, if you don't
Okay.
mind. Okay, are we ready? So we're thinking Houston here. All right, so Katherine Center with rapid fire of your favorite family-friendly restaurant in Houston.
Good Company Taqueria.
Ooh, I love
Hmm.
it. Um, okay, favorite meal to make that everyone will eat.
There is only one meal in my entire family that everyone likes equally well, and it's tortilla soup. Yeah,
Okay, do you do it crock pot or stovetop?
stovetop, and it's tomatoes and onions and garlic and cumin, and then you make this sort of tomato base, and then you add chicken and chicken broth, and then at the end you do hunks of avocado and crumpled up um, chips and cheese on top,
Yeah.
and cilantro and lime juice. That's really important. Um,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
could make that soup in my sleep. I could be fast asleep and make that soup.
So, I mean, because what a gift when you have one meal that
Oh,
everyone will eat, right?
one meal. There's one
And
meal.
we're in soup season now, so that one sounds delicious. And that's very Houstonian, by the way. Like that's very Houston. Um, favorite place, either now or when the kids were little to take them in Houston.
Well, when they were really little, it was the zoo, like an all winter long, right? Winter's the time for the zoo. We spent a lot of time
Yeah.
there. But as they got bigger, this isn't technically Houston, but just like FYI, in Galveston, one of our favorite things to do on the weekends was to go and see the tall ship Alyssa. And if y'all have not been to see it, it's incredible. It's like a historic sailing ship that you can go and tour and walk all around, but it's a real ship that they restored. And it's really cool.
Okay.
It's docked down there in Galveston. Great to take the kids and walk all around and check it out.
That is so good to know. I didn't know about that.
It's
And I
awesome.
have a son who's like what's the word? It's not ship obsessed, but he's like military ships, like nautical. Nautical is the word I was like.
Nautical. Yes, do it. It's amazing. And there's all kinds of great books and they'll give you a tour and you can actually volunteer and like go down there on the weekends and like swab the decks and stuff. It's very cool.
Oh, okay. I love to know that. Great tip. Okay. So you have a Catherine weekend or a Catherine free time. Maybe think back to when the kids were like in high school or middle school. What did you, because now you have a little bit of free time, but what did you do then? What was your like mom centric, I'm going to go do something for myself free time?
Honestly, to be totally honest, bubble bath and a book, just get in there and lock the door and yeah, nobody can come in and ask me to do anything. My email can't like ding at me, I'm not getting any texts. Um, I mean, I can spend the whole day in the bubble bath just reading. And my husband, who's like, got like a job, that's like intense and like a lot of stuff dealing with middle
Yeah.
schoolers all day. He can like come home at the end of the day and be like, "Did you spend the whole day in the bathtub?" And I'll be like, "I'm working right now. This is my job." Um, so yeah, that's like really, if I could do anything with free time, I would get in the bathtub and read.
So all my friends that are watching this just shook their head and they said, "Oh, Megan, like that's you." Because everyone knows that is my very favorite way to unwind because it's like whether I can do it for 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, like it's my time.
Yeah.
And I have been known to rubber band those doors so nobody can come busting through. I'm like, I'll tell my husband, I'm like, you better grab your toothbrush now, because I'm gonna be in here for a minute. Uh,
It's very nourishing.
it is, and it's inexpensive, which I
Yeah.
love. Like, grab some Dr. Teal's from
Yes.
HB. It's like $5.99,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I
you
love that
make it.
stuff.
Yeah.
There's one that smells so good. It's the ginger and clay. It smells like 7 Up or something. It's like you're taking a bath in a soda. It's really good.
Oh,
It's
I have
great.
not tried that one. I typically stick to like the lavender ones because it's like at night and it's like the lavender chamomile. Like I'm trying to pretend that I won't need sleep medicine later. I'm like, oh, we'll be wholesome now. But okay, I love that you do that. Totally relate. Um, this one is a broad rapid fire. So I apologize in advance. Favorite thing about being a mom?
I I loved it all. And I shouldn't put it in past tense because I'm still a mom, technically. Um, I love how it makes your heart bigger,
Mm,
you know, like loving them the way that you have to love kids in that intense, unstoppable, relentless, um, all-encompassing way makes you a better person, you know?
oh,
It just does. It makes you better at love. And I'm grateful for it. It's really hard raising kids. Like it is. It's just all day, all the time, 24/7, 365. And it's very overwhelming a lot of times. And I never was prepared for how much worrying there was
yeah.
going to be. Um,
Yeah.
but but it makes you bigger. It kind of turns you into a superhero. There's something about it that is expanding your soul in this really big way. So I'm grateful that I got to do it.
Oh, and that you are still doing it,
Still
but
doing it. Still doing it
but I do,
in a very different way.
yes. I think it's a crazy sort of love, right? Because you're just like you're pursuing like daily of just being like, okay, I love you so much. I may not like you so much right now, but I love you so, so much. And yeah, it's just, but can you imagine what your brain was doing? For me, it's been 14 and a half years. For you, 21, 22 years, where like they weren't on your mind then. And now they've been on your mind probably every hour of every day ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, and my mom says that never goes away, by the way. I
Great.
do. Yeah, yeah,
I
so
believe it. My mom's 75 and, I know she's still thinking about me daily and,
yeah.
on our Wordle text and, um, that's how she's up in Dallas. We kind of stay connected through Wordles. And, when everything's going away, like mom and I still have our love and our Wordle and all of that. Speaking of your kids and their mom, how do they feel about you being the author that you are? Do they get it? I mean, they get it now. Like, did they get it then, though? That mom was kind of a big deal?
Um, they did and they didn't in that way that little kids do and don't. Like I remember before one of my early book events, my daughter made me this macaroni necklace and I wore it. She was
Yeah.
she was like, this is for your event. I was like, yes, thank you so much. Um, I think they've always had this experience of like people I think know me pretty well in Houston. I've visited so many book clubs. I've met so many people. I'm from here, that, I'll be shopping in HEB. And this was true even 10 years ago. And people just like people whose book club I have visited will come up and give me a hug and check in.
No.
So my kids are very used to that aspect of it. We would be
Yeah.
shopping for dinner and strangers would be hugging me in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Um, but now it's happening in a sort of a bigger, different way. People hug me in the airport now. Like it's just a kind of a whole different level of things. And my kids still like it kind of that does kind of blow their mind.
Mm,
My daughter didn't tell her roommates when she went to college at first about me because she just kind of wanted to go to college and just be herself and not like have to talk about her mom. And
yeah.
that's totally fine. I respected that. But when she finally did tell them, like at one point she just sort of sat them down and she was like, guys, I just need you to know my mom is an author. One of her roommates just was like, oh my God, I love your mom. She got me through the pandemic. And I was like, okay, like there's got to be some upsides for having me as a mom. So that was good. And then the other night, actually, my son, after a seminar in college, called me with a bunch of friends and put me on speakerphone. And he was like, we just listened to this lecture all about storytelling in human life. And I was telling my friends, like, my mom talks about that stuff all the time. Give us like, what are your thoughts? And I was like, well, how much time do you have? And then I got to like on speaker, like give this sort of mini TED talk to a bunch of college freshmen about storytelling. It was really fun. I was like, this is awesome.
That's such a full circle moment, too. That's so awesome. And I think, and one thing I love about your books, and if y'all have not picked one up, like, and we kind of talked about this when you came to our book club so graciously, um, these aren't like, how do we say? Closed door. They're more closed door romances. We're not getting super explicit here. They are very much a romance that you could envision stuff happening. But I will say this, for those of you who are sensitive, my 14-year-old, I let her read these books. And
Yeah.
I read you that text, I think, that my daughter had written. My daughter was more excited than, I mean, not more, but like just as excited as me to that I was going to get to meet you, um, because she loves your books too. And so, if you have teens, tweens, young adults, or like these are just the best. It's a good
Yeah.
escape. So thank you
Yeah.
for writing them the way you do. I think it's where the storytelling really takes precedence, right?
Yeah, they're very PG-13. They are low spice. There's really just mostly kissing. I try to make the kissing like as yummy and fun and delicious and 3D as
Yeah.
possible, but that's kind of where we fade to black after that. And they're safe to read with your grandma, safe to read with your kids or your daughter-in-law or whoever. Um, and that's partly because my husband is a middle school teacher and his kids are very curious to know what Mr. Center's wife is up to. So I just try to like make it all safe for everybody. Um, it's also partly because like at one point, um, I heard I was actually seeing reviews from people who were like saying they wish there was more spice, and I kind of out loud to myself in my dining room wondered, out loud, should I put more spice in the books? People are asking for more spice. And my daughter was walking by and she was like, I, for one, never need you to do that. And it was just kind of this funny moment where I was like, yeah, that window has closed. Like, there's no way at this point with sentient young adults walking around in my family, there's no way I'm going to start doing it. So I just have to make it as swoony and delicious as possible without relying on that particular tool from the toolbox.
Yeah.
And so what it winds up leaning on, what all my stories wind up leaning on is like the longing, right? That feeling
Yes.
of longing, that just feeling of just wanting to be with somebody so bad. And that's kind of where and that's what I love about love stories anyway. I mean, that's really my sort of sweet spot anyway. But so my stories have a lot of swooniness and a lot of longing and a lot of banter and a lot of play and comedy and yummy stuff like that. But yeah, they're never gonna we're never going to go into that bedroom with everybody. I mean, but I support it,
Yeah.
3 cheers for spice, but it's just not the thing that I happen to do.
Well, and I think it's super authentic to who you are as an author. And I think if you try to do it now, everyone would be like, yeah, I'm not sure that we believe that. Like, you would totally have to do it under like a pseudonym. Be like, it's not me. I'm not the middle school teacher's wife. I think your books are super swoony, super delicious. But I also appreciate you so much sharing a little bit of your motherhood journey. And that you're fifth generation Houstonian. We love that.
Yeah,
Came,
yeah,
saw, and stayed. Like, I mean, like,
yeah, yeah. We didn't get yellow fever. We made it. We're still here.
the
Yeah,
Hardy bunch you are. So we're so glad you are here. We're so glad that you are part of the Houston landscape, and that we can see you at HEB or the airport and feel comfortable enough to go up and say hello.
yeah.
So you
Come
were
give
a
me a hug.
delight.
Thank
Thank
you.
Oh, so much fun. And I hope you guys, if you haven't read any of Catherine's books, please go pick them up. This is the latest one. You can see it behind Catherine right there. It's the rom-commers. You heard it here. May 2025. Get ready, guys. It's only like 5 months away. That will be out. And then we'll eagerly await the one that we heard she was writing for 2026 down in Galveston. So Catherine, thank you so much. We will be back next month with another high profile, high impact Houston mom on the move. Thank you so much for joining this series. If you have questions or you have recommendations of who we should interview next, please drop them below. But we thank you so much for tuning in and we can't wait to see you next month. Have a good day.